Thanks for tuning in for another episode of the Supply Chain podcast. We're really happy to have a special guest with us here today, and also a friend of mine, Fred Ragsdale. He happens to be a pretty knowledgeable person in the supply chain world, particularly in the commercial real estate, I guess you would say, part of it. And so what we want to do is dive into that today and kind of educate everyone a little bit on just what the commercial real estate industry is like when it comes to supply chain. Sure. And a little bit of your background, your experience. First, could you just kind of just give us a little introduction to yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Fred Ragsdale. I'm a senior vice president at CBRE. Been here going on a year now. I was previously with another one of our competitors, actually, JLL, for I guess 6 or 7 years. But yeah, my focus is solely on industrial assets. So kind of layers into supply chain, just because, logistics and supply chain are the backbone of, where you place your warehouses and where you locate your manufacturing operations. And so the career more or less started off in the industrial world, but has since almost morphed into a level of supply chain, site selection, project consulting as well. And so all on the real estate side of the business. So whether that's talking with municipalities and cities or landowners about their projects, or working with institutional groups on existing warehouse infrastructure, or even working on, spec warehouse projects or build to suits for clients as well. It really it runs the gamut, but don't really touch office, retail, stadiums, any of that. We just kind of stay in our lane in the industrial world. So.
And how did you get onto this path in the first place? What did you study in school, and what did you think you wanted to do one day when you were in school?
That is a good question. Honestly, when I was in school, so I went to school, I did an undergrad and a master's in accounting. Yep. Alabama State University and the University of Missouri, Kansas City for my master's degree. But when I was going through school, there was only one thing I wanted to do, and that was play in the NFL. And so I was a smart kid, though. My parents really reinforced in our lives, like, hey, don't waste opportunities. So there was always a focus on taking advantage of every opportunity. So I did fairly well in school. So I got an undergrad and a graduate degree in accounting. And when I finished with that and finished pursuing my dreams of NFL grandeur, I found myself working in finance for one of the large banks in the United States out in Charlotte. And so from there, it wasn't for me. I wasn't a sit behind the desk every day person and navigate Excels, which I know how to do. And for the right person, it is like a great career path and can be very rewarding. I have a great friend, or one of my best friends. That's the world he works in, and he's thrived in that role. But for me, it was a little dry. And so I was speaking with my mother one day, and she was telling me about how well she was doing in residential real estate and how great it was and the opportunities. And I don't know, I through a discussion, I ended up kind of giving it a second thought and really giving consideration to being in the real estate world. And through a series of steps, that morphed into commercial real estate, because I felt that way I could take advantage of the education I had, along with being in a more sales forward role, like working with organizations and being very hands-on to the integral processes that, every company has. And so that was kind of how it navigated that way.
Aside from work, we'll talk about more work stuff in a little bit, but what do you do, kind of occupy your time when you're not working?
So I spend the majority of my time with my amazing wife, Jessica Ragsdale. We actually met through a group that me and Nathan are both a part of, CSCMP. It was one of the first events that I attended in Dallas, and this amazing woman walked in, and I could not stop talking to her, to the point where I was like, I need to stop talking to her before I just look like the thirsty guy at the networking event. And long story short, she was not upset with me, so we just kept talking, and now we are married for going on 3 years now, or over 3 years now, and we have our beautiful son we welcomed to the world, Wilbert, 18 months ago, or 16 months ago, excuse me. And so, that's where I spend my free time. And if I have any other free time outside of that, I'll be on my road bike riding around trying to get in shape because Nathan has been road cycling with me before and I was a little husky at the time and it was a rough afternoon, but that's where I spend most of my free time.
Now that you are a consumer of a different nature, you've been a bachelor sort of consumer, a sports enthusiast consumer for years, kind of putting your supply chain glasses on as a consumer of children's toys and diapers and formula and all that sort of stuff. What are some of your experiences of being a parent in the supply chain world now?
I definitely have a much better grasp of why we need same day delivery services. Running to the store in the middle of the night can be a little bit of a headache, but necessary sometimes. But also we take advantage all the time of some of the like last mile delivery services, Instacart and groups like that, where you can just order something and have them brought to your house. So we love using them and like a DoorDash to get Huggies or wipes or whatever we're running out of that we need in emergency. So yes, you do pay a lot more attention to the players in the market and who is out there delivering on these last mile services for sure. And then also trying to find who's got the best value if you're going to order in bulk as well. So yes, it was very, very different than my life as a bachelor when it was just who's got the best price on wine and beer and wings.
Yeah. And so maybe we can flip that now to if you put your day job kind of hat back on. Customers that you're working with and folks that you're supporting are probably really interested in how they get closer to customers to be able to deliver that final mile and that really convenient sort of delivery options. So switching, taking off the dad hat and putting on the professional hat. What's that like? Because now you're an end consumer of that process. Any sort of insights on what it's like on the business end of that?
I'd probably say what we've seen in the last 12 to 18 months, or call it even 24 months, is so of course through COVID, there was this huge rush to just get next to your client, make sure you can deliver as quickly as possible. But as those supply chains have started to get more and more efficient, I think that every operator realizes they have a unique prospect that they bring to their client. And because of that, we've seen some groups back off of having to be just right on top of the clientele that they're trying to service. Whereas others, they're trying to get faster. But for certain organizations, hey, maybe I don't have to be in a major market and pay, major market rent because there's not as much sensitivity as I thought. Or we can now, through supply chain efficiencies, reach those people groups in an equitable time, maybe not just sitting in that market. And what we've seen really now is you have a lot more focus on labor and where you can keep consistent and quality labor, as well as your normal things like infrastructure, be it electricity or if we're talking about manufacturing, electricity and water or wastewater. But yeah, it's definitely a different view that is constantly, evolving as you've seen in your world as well, whether that's, integration of automation or more efficient facilities. So, yeah.
Right. So you started kind of talking about some trends there. There's a big trend I think everyone's talking about these days, which is nearshoring and bringing sort of manufacturing back closer to the U.S. or onto the North American continent. You're situated, I think, in a pretty good spot here in Dallas. Can you kind of shed some light on how that trend is going from your perspective?
So like the kind of quick low-hanging fruit is, one, we're close to the border. So there's a lot of organizations specifically around automotives or around car manufacturing or the automotive industry that are positioning themselves just across the border and then, shipping and distributing goods across to facilities here or, Laredo or Houston, so just anywhere in Texas to then get to the greater market or wherever those manufacturing facilities are that are going to buy those goods. 12 to 18 months ago, majority of the active, we call it our tenants in the market, which are just the businesses that are looking for warehouses or distribution centers or even sites for manufacturing. Majority of that was third-party logistics firms, like 3PLs. And today, 55% of the demand that we're tracking is from manufacturing operations. So you can really see the nearshoring start to paint itself out in, our markets, and even going into central Texas and south sort of the border as well.
Mm-hmm. So there's a little surge of manufacturing,
For sure,
end users kind of in the market in your world.
A lot in the solar world, like I said, automotives, food production. I mean, you name it. There's just a ton of flow this way, just for the business friendly environment of Texas, and some people argue maybe the tax base that we have, or the tax environment you have to operate in. Along with the labor, you had so much migration, and that's not just Texas, in the South and Southeast as well. And you can probably go over to Las Vegas and the state of Nevada, where they've gotten a lot of influx of southern migration. So yeah.
That labor component, though, you touched on it a while ago, is one of the probably sort of key care abouts for those folks, and especially if they have a labor intensive operation, that they need to be close to a labor force that's going to take care of them, be reliable, be skilled enough to do what they need them to do. Is there talk, in your sort of conversations that you're having regarding automation and trying to offset some of that risk that you have with labor force, and with trying to go with more automated facilities, more automated manufacturing?
It's a mix of things. I think that automation is constantly improving and easier and more affordable for clients to put into their facilities. But the other part is the really savvy operators. They just are really honing in on their efficiencies. Like there's a retailer, clothing apparel manufacturer that we deal with, that they thought that introducing automation would make them, much more efficient. And what they realized was, if they could actually just clean up their aisles, and not clean up, but like reorganize their racking and the flow of their warehouse, they got as much production as they would out of, or much more efficiencies as they would out of like introducing automation. Because it was just, hey, how can we reconfigure? Yeah. And, there's limits to that, right? There's always so much you can get out of your people as well, without them, looking for the next job, because it just turns to a grindhouse. But between, making your facility as efficient as possible, and then, paying a respectable wage, because in Texas, we do have that from time to time. Groups will come here looking to, place a facility, and they may not want to compete with the prevailing wages for labor. And that can be problematic, or that can make things difficult for them to enter a market.
I liked that you touched on your sort of example case where you said someone basically just focused on optimizing the space that they had and getting the most sort of utilization and capacity out of it. Mm-hmm. I've heard tell of some folks, consulting firms and whatnot out in the market, that kind of specialize in just helping you stretch every square foot and cubic foot you've got in a building before you make that really big capital investment in automation, and just make sure that you've done everything you can, to get the most. From your perspective, what's the end goal, I guess, when you're engaging with customers?
Sure. My goal is to be a problem solver. So problem solver is not necessarily specific to growing your warehouse footprint. It's just to being as efficient as possible, and thus hopefully making my clients as profitable as possible. I'm big on relationships, so I feel like in my career, I've been very blessed to build strong relationships with clients, and generally that is driven by trust, and that trust comes from always doing what is right for your clients. Mm-hmm. I mean, that goes the furthest of anything. You never know when somebody's going through an acquisition, or when your client might be growing, or even when they might be shuttering space, and there might be an opportunity to help another group, come into the business world. But either way, that never really scares me. I just look at everything as an opportunity. One door closes, another one opens. So that's just my general view. So I'm always, as long as my clients are happy, I'm happy.
Yeah. You mentioned that about clients and whatnot, and earlier you mentioned CSCMP. Mm-hmm. How do you go about, finding clients and kind of finding new folks to partner with and work with? What organizations, or what kind of strategies do you use for that?
Sure. So a large measure of what we do is, I guess, cold calling, going out to warehouses and just door to door talking with folks and getting in in the faces of the operators in your region. And then from there, you'll navigate to their corporate groups and those kind of things, but also specific groups. CSCMP, I've been a member with them for going on 5 or 6 years now. And then I'm part of some other industry groups. There's another organization called IAMC, which is the Industrial Asset Management Council. Fantastic folks there, as well as a slew of other groups. But I mean, just being brutally honest, so much comes for me from connecting dots. So whether you're out cold calling, you learn some things about an operator there, and maybe you can only go so far because the leader in that facility only has so much reach. Mm-hmm. But then you're at these other large events or large conferences, whether it's a site selection forum or IMC or CSCMP, and you're able to meet with someone maybe from that organization, and all of a sudden a lot more about what's going on with them than you even imagine, and you're able to just connect the dots. And CSCMP is a great example of that as well, because there's so many consultants that kind of are in that environment that whether you can help a client or not, or whether they're looking for commercial real estate or not, you can always be a resource to your clients because, hey, we don't need warehouses, but our forklifts crapped out and we can't get any because everything's on back order. And all of a sudden, hey, I know somebody from CSCMP that runs a forklift operation that can get you forklifts overnight. Yeah. Or consulting. We have plenty of consultants within CBRE that we work with, whether that's, inside the box optimization, supply chain consulting, specific services, whether, network optimization, you name it, but it's site selection as well. But you can also go to the groups that you're a part of and connect people that way. And it really makes you a resource. And I mean, honestly, that's what we're all looking for. Like, you want somebody that's resourceful. I mean, that's why people watch your channel, Nathan. Like, you're always putting things on the calendar about what's going on in the market and, what events are coming up. And then you're always trying to educate people about the industry and, show operations with your videos that you do. And I think that there's a lot of people that get value from that, and you become a resource and the person they reach out to when they need help. So
and I'm always happy to pick up the phone call. If you were in college today, you got 1 more year or 2 more years left, and you hear this podcast today, you say, I want to do what Fred does. What advice would you give that student of classes or a major or things that they can do outside of school to kind of put them on a path to be sitting in this chair in the future?
Oh, wow. It's straightforward. It's just, I might irritate some people that don't want everybody to know this stuff. No, it's really straightforward. So in my world, I'm a real estate broker. So we're always reaching out to people, and thus we always are picking up our phones. Mm-hmm. So if I was talking to a student out there today and saying, like, what should you do if you want to be in commercial real estate or really any business? Call the people, get in front of the people, figure out, what kind of events they attend, or if they're part of CSCMP, start showing up to CSCMP. Big thing with networking groups. If you're going to be in a networking group, consistently attend, because that's like kind of the easiest way for people to kind of filter through you. Because in any organization, there's always people that are going to show up once, try to hand out 1,000 business cards and, move from there. But the real powerful movers, whether it's, somebody that's a real estate broker or running an organization, is they build relationships. So if you find a group or an industry you want to be in, try to find things in that world that you can consistently attend, because once you do that, you will build relationships with folks. Even if you don't know it, they're always seeing you. So they're like, oh, like, who are you? Or when you make that phone call, say, hey, I saw you at the event. And they're like, oh, yeah, I do remember you. Like, those things matter. And so that would be my first suggestion. Then specifically to the real estate world, call senior people there. We're brokers. We're accessible. Don't send emails. Just try to connect with people. Get as close as you can to sitting face to face with someone, because that is like the most powerful connection. I've had every job that I've had. I think that, filling out the online application was a formality after they decided they wanted to hire me. I don't know if I'm going to get myself in trouble for saying that, but it's always like, oh yeah, do that too. But it was through a face-to-face connection or making a phone call and getting in front of somebody, or sometimes sending an email and then following up with a phone call. But it's always about getting face-to-face with people. I know, especially for younger generation, And even for myself at a point, it's really easy to send a text or an email because it almost gives the illusion of not being rejected. And so it's like, hey, if they don't answer, they just didn't respond. Mm-hmm. But if I go and talk to somebody face to face, like, hey, can I have a job? And they're like, fly a kite, which is everybody's worst fears. So go tell me to get lost. Yeah. Like if you can get around that one, most people aren't that rude. So it's rare that somebody's going to tell you kick rocks or fly a kite. They're usually going to want to talk to you or at least give you some insight into, how to navigate into the world they're in. So I'm rambling, but I have a lot of thoughts on that. So
what about particular field of study? So you've been in the industry for a bit, you studied accounting. Mm-hmm. So what, is that perfectly suitable, or like maybe go after a finance degree, or I believe there's real estate degrees out there. Any suggestions there?
There are real estate degrees, but I mean, all of them are good. I'm not shooting going to shoot anybody's degree field down. What I would say is, for me, accounting is kind of like the backbone of business. So that was my thought. The same with finance. Like a big portion of our industry is in the sales sector, capital markets sales sector. So essentially you're looking at, portfolios of warehouses as investment instruments. And so then you're, selling those to other institutional groups or wealthy individuals that, want to keep real estate as an investment holding so that they can get, the returns they're looking for on their assets. And so accounting, finance, even, if you get an MBA, that can get a little bit more complicated because a lot of those folks almost will fall more into working on the corporate client side, just because, I'm getting into the weeds again, but you can generally start off at probably a much higher paid scale if you were to go that route and have an MBA. So,
Gotcha.
At the end of the day, the very successful people in my world, they're thinking about their clients' problems, or this over cliche one, what keeps their clients up at night, but they're really thinking about that. And that's the way we approach our business. It's like, if I just come to you and say, hey, like, Nathan, you want to buy a warehouse with me? You want to lease a warehouse with me? You're like, yeah, there's 30 other people that asked me that today or, this month. But when I come to you and say, hey, I know that you need to consolidate your operations. I understand that you've got some redundancies in this market. I think that I could put a deal together where your current, building that you're in, the landlord might actually terminate your lease. And then this other group is trying to get out of this building. So they might pay your moving expenses to get you into this space. Like, because I understand all these costs that really will hamstring you if you were to pursue this. But at the end of the day, if you could do it, it would make you more efficient. That gets people to pay attention. And they're like, oh, wait, you said what? You can save me what? And then you can get into supply chain consulting where we bring our consultants in, or they have an external consultant. They're saying, well, yeah, if you do this, you can reach clientele or your market's much better. And it's just, when you're thinking about it, though, from that scale and that scope and the strategy, it's like, oh, they get the problems that I'm reconciling. And that's when you become a strategic partner. And
right. I think you could boil that down into just being creative. And you've got to have that expertise to know all the puzzle pieces, but a bit of creativity in there. Great listener. And innovation, right? Of putting all those together. And you heard someone at a conference yesterday say something. And then last year, someone that does something. And you take, Mark Twain has this famous quote where he says, there's no new or original ideas. We just take old ones and we jumble them up together in a different sort of way. And we come up with this new creative sort of output. Kind of open the floor. Is there any sort of thoughts on the industry, kind of where things are headed? Is there some innovative thing out on the horizon that's coming up that maybe people should be aware of, or something that you're just really passionate about talking on?
The big thing that everybody's kind of paying attention to at this point is just how will AI impact our world?
Okay.
And from a perspective, like we sit at some of these conferences and you'll have folks get up and talk about artificial intelligence. And a lot of our clients, I'll be candid, the thing that I'm looking for, I haven't seen it yet, is, when will we really be able to add predictive analytics to what we're doing? Because for a lot of real estate firms, and the least ones I've experienced, like we'll provide a lot of data, but it's generally looking at where you are and behind, like, a snapshot of where you are today and then what's happened in the past, but rarely outside of the broker, putting out their estimations of, you know, where things are going or what you should do, there's not a lot projected forward. And so the thought is, or my thought is, you know, your winner in the real estate world in the commercial real estate world will be the organization that really figures out how to leverage AI tools to drive decision making forward for their clients and to help them understand, hey, you know, maybe you should think about renewing this lease early. You know, as brokers, we do that too, but if somebody can figure out how to build a tool that can do that, which, you know, there's probably job implications there, but I think that will create a lot of value for our clients, because that's the one thing that I consistently hear from operators in the market is, hey, like, I've got 1,000 dashboards. Like, I appreciate it, but another dashboard isn't really helping me.
Yeah.
But if you can give me, you know, some kind of platform that we work from, and, you know, you're still doing our deals and executing whatever we need to do. But if there's a tool that you put together that helps us think forward and project forward as to what we should be doing, when and where, that's gold for us. And so
they're asking if you have a crystal ball. In a way, sort of.
Crystal ball, I wouldn't even go that far. It's just, you know, like an organization the size of CBRE, there's so much data that we have in-house about, you know, the deals that are being done, things that are happening in the market.
Yeah.
There's like a real thought that you could, if you're, you know, if you've got 100 warehouses that, you know, are north of 100,000 square feet, and you're seeing trends in one market, because most trends in the U.S. follow the coast and then inward, right? Okay. So like the simple thing is 3 years ago, 4% escalation. So you have year over year rent growth. So you sign a lease for 5 years, and every year the rent increases by a percentage. So in the Dallas-Fort Worth market forever, it'd been like 3% or flat. And then all of a sudden it started creeping up. And I'm at events and we're talking to people on the coast, and they're like, oh yeah, we're at 4%. They're asking for 4.5% escalations to keep up with inflation. Uh-huh. People are like, that's never going to happen. 4% is now the standard in Dallas. Like, if you get a deal under 4%, you have to have a really big user with very strong credit. And that it's softened a little bit now. So maybe not so hard on 4%, but that was the standard for like all the last 18 months.
Yeah.
And so just if you could take the massive amount of data that an organization like us has, and you could see that trend coming,
yeah,
then you might look at your client and say, hey, we need to renew now as long as possible and push escalation 3.5%. Because even if they raise the rent slightly, we can model out that you win in the long run. And maybe you get to a point where your AI is saying, yeah, we modeled it out for you, and this is what you should be doing.
Yeah.
But doesn't say not so much even crystal ball, just forward thinking and just making great suggestions, because that's what our clients are looking for at this point.
Yeah. And to your point, that's kind of what AI does. It gives you say like, I need to write a letter to my mom for Mother's Day. You have ChatGPT do it for you, and it's going to be a pretty good idea, but you're going to go kind of refine it,
right? Put
your own expertise and knowledge and your own sort of words in it, but it helps point you in the right direction and give you some new ideas, some creative sort of solutions, whatnot.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure.
Sweet. Well, I think that we've uncovered a lot. I've learned personally a lot about the world of light industrial or industrial commercial real estate.
Industrial.
Yeah. And also hosting us. So this is the first podcast that we've shot off-site in face-to-face sort of way.
Thanks for coming to Uptown and hanging out down here at the CBRE office.
Yeah.
They're actually getting ready to renovate this whole thing. So by September, I guess all this will be being torn down.
Yeah.
But so thanks for coming down.
Yeah. Again, I'll be seeing you at some events and out there networking and meeting new folks and whatnot. So I appreciate the time, Fred.
Yeah, always, man.
Yeah, thanks.